CK, the latest transaction, HDB break 1.5 mil. No need to buy already Hey there TLians, welcome back to my channel for another insightful episode. This is Pauline the Lao Chio, and today we are going to touch on something that is very close to each and everyone's heart, our housing. Yes, and specifically today we'll be talking about our public housing, which is HDB. Yes. How many of you right now are sourcing for an HDB or looking to upgrade? So today we are going to have someone to share more with you about the buying, selling of HDB, and of course talking about financials as well. So let's welcome CK. Hello CK.
Hi Pauline.
Yeah, maybe you'd like to share with us a little bit more about your background. Like how many years are you in the property line as an agent?
Okay, I've been in this line for about 10 years already. For the last 6 years, I've been focusing primarily on HDB segment.
Oh, okay. So like how many transactions have you done like over 6 years?
Over 6 years, probably in the hundreds.
Wow, in the hundreds. So you have seen many types and many groups of people, from the young to the not so young to the senior type.
Yes, actually from first timers
Yes.
to even which is getting more common now.
Yes.
I'm doing a lot of estate sales as well.
Oh, estate sales. Okay, we'll talk more about that. But let's start off with the first group of people, which is the young newbies. So maybe we just go straight in and dive into what are the considerations that we need to have if, let's say, me and my future husband is going to get our very first HDB for the young couple.
Okay, I think first and foremost, we have to see what are their needs and their requirements. Do they need something that's immediate, or do they have time to wait for a BTO? Because a BTO general waiting period is still about 4 to 5 years. So it very much depends on their needs.
In the past, when I buy BTO, it was actually quite easier because we just need to abide by certain rules. Maybe one thing, which is the MOP, minimum occupation period, which is about 5 years. But right now, it seems like there are different variations. It's extended to 10 years for some location and even in some non-prime location. So maybe you can give us a little bit more clarity what this is all about. Yeah.
Okay. It's a good thing that you mentioned about the MOP period, but the MOP period doesn't apply just to BTOs.
Oh, okay.
It applies to resale flats as well. So this minimum occupation period requires the owner to stay in the flat for 5 years before they can sell their flat in the open market. So you're right to say that things have changed. The 10-year MOP period first came up when the cluster of flats in Rochor was developed.
Okay.
So those are the HDB would consider a prime location HDB flat, which sells at a higher premium, and they also have a different set of resale levy that's applicable to those special prime area flats.
Okay, okay. Yeah. So what are the other considerations that we need to have apart from the needs? Yeah.
I think the needs is still paramount, the most important. But before a couple typically goes out to look for a flat, they also have to know what are their financial capabilities like. So we have to do a very careful review of what's their income level, what are their commitments, how much are they comfortable in setting aside for their housing needs. So that's second most important. Then once we have their needs ascertained, once we have their financials more or less understood already, then we can start looking at what locations can they consider when they're looking for a flat. Okay,
so the broad 3 categories, I think the needs, the financial as well, then decide on the location. Okay, so let's go back a little bit, delve a little bit deeper in terms of the needs. So let's say now I'm a couple. So how do I know if I should get like a 3-room HDB flat, 4-room HDB flat, or a 5-room HDB flat? Assuming I think I need to set certain context. Probably I'm right now like 25 years old, because you mentioned that a BTO takes 5 years. So by the time I have a flat, it's like 30 years old. Okay, so for a woman actually, and then I need to consider in terms of the wedding preparation and having children and things like that. So how do we then know where should we go and ballot and the size of the house that we need? Let's say it's like 5 years down the road at about 30 years old.
Okay.
Yes.
I think most families will typically start with a 3-room flat or 4-room flat. So a 3-room flat will have 2 bedrooms, 4-room flat will have 3 bedrooms. So that's usually sufficient for a small family. But let's say if you're going to be staying with parents, if they're aging and they might be living together with you in the years to come, or if you plan to have many children, then you might want to have a bigger space, like a 5-room flat or a executive flat, for example. So space consideration is usually one of the first factors to consider.
Okay, so other than space, then with that we take a look in terms of the financials. So which one comes first, financials or location?
I would think financials will have to come first.
Oh, financials, okay,
So whenever we go and look for something to buy, we must know how much we have in our wallet.
How much
are we capable of setting aside? So we don't want to go shopping and look for the best thing, but find out that we don't have enough money to do the purchase. So it's just going to be a waste of time. So I think the most prudent way is to check the financials, make sure we have enough. Then we see with this sum of money, what is available to us.
Alright, so generally, like from your experience, like those in the 25, 26 years old, when they take a look at it, what kind of range do you think? We don't talk about those who are high extreme earners or the very low income earners. Generally, like, let's say diploma holders, having probably one couple, a household income, both joining together about 6K or so. I think roughly most young generation are having that like 2-3K salary, add up together probably about 6-7K. That kind of salary, right? So if they were to take a look at maybe 5 years down the road, it would increase I believe so. They would have increment to about, maybe by the time they start to service their house at 30 years old, maybe about 8-9K to even 10K of a household income. So then what kind of consideration would they need to have with that kind of income?
I've worked out some scenarios. So
that's great.
6-7K was the first one that I was looking at. If you don't mind if I refer to this.
Sure,
I need to take out my expenses. So let's say if you have a combined income of 6K, they could comfortably afford a HDB that's in the 400 to 500K range.
400 to 500, okay.
So that means that their installment, considering a full loan, installment of about 1,600. 1,600 versus a 6K income combined, I think it's quite comfortable.
Alright.
So then, now that we know the financials, 400 to 500K, then we can roughly understand which locations are within their budget. So that's the reason why we have to look at financials first before we even talk about location.
Alright, so if they want to know how much loan they can get, they can go to the HDB website to find out, or they give the agent a call or what?
There are quite a lot of online resources to do that. HDB also have their own loan affordability calculator.
They call the HLE, is it?
The HFE, HLE, or they have a separate calculator to do that for you.
Alright.
And there are also a lot of other private websites that does this calculation as well.
Okay, So very importantly, need to understand our own financials. We can do a little bit of a projection. If you know your career track, I think that can be in consideration as well. So do we need to take into consideration in the event, touch wood, one person is out of job? Because you mentioned like a household income of 6-7K. So do we need to take into consideration that what if one person is out of job, only left with a sole breadwinner?
Definitely, you have to take that into consideration because if your household income from 6K suddenly drops down to 3K, then the loan is still running. You still need to finance the installments. So it becomes very stressful for the family. So initially when we plan, we also have to look at the job stability of the person, of the purchasers who are taking up the loan. So that's very important as well.
So if you want to be very prudent, you could just rely on one person's salary, and that can be your calculation as well to be even more prudent and conservative. So we have covered the part where we are more prudent, or probably those with not much of an income to start off with right now. Let's talk about the other extreme, probably those with relatively high income youngsters. Nowadays, some graduates really, when they start to come out to work, their pay generally probably starting pay is about 5K plus. And after working for 2 to 3 years, and they decide with their spouse or future husband, future wife, they want to come together to buy a BTO. So what is the ceiling right now in terms of getting a BTO?
The income ceiling right now is 14K to enjoy any kind of subsidy or to be eligible to get a BTO from HDB direct.
Yeah, so it's 14K, which means let's say on average one person 7K. Yes. So right now, if let's say I'm 25, 26 years old, and me and my future husband right now at about 5K plus 6K pay, we are like, oops, we might hit the ceiling soon. Yeah, is that a consideration to quickly go and get a BTO to enjoy the subsidies?
Some people might think that it's something that they need to act on, but not necessarily so. But let's say if their dream is to start off with a HDB, with a property on their own, and they don't want to be restricted by their income, then I think that's something that they can act on.
Yeah. In your own personal opinion, okay, so this is personal opinion. If you have a choice, for example, you know you can afford a condo or even a resale flat right now. So you are like 25 years old and with your future wife, and maybe in 1 or 2 years you should be able to afford a condo. Would you still go for BTO at this stage to wait for that 5 years?
I think you also have to consider what's the purpose of buying that property. Is it for your own stay, or is it for wealth accumulation to grow your capital? I think that's very important also, because if your intention is to start a family, don't want to have too much financial commitments, and probably wait for your BTO MOP to reach, and there's also a capital appreciation from there, then you could upgrade comfortably to a condo later on. So it depends on whether they want to do it on the on-start, or they want to have a first 5 years comfortable, raise their kids before they move on to the next stage.
Okay, so if let's say I'm using this as a form of probably future wealth accumulation, as in not only for my own stay, 5 to 10 years down the road, I'm looking at upgrading as well. And in upgrading, I'm also looking at having some form of benefits from this HDB. Now, what are where are the location? Is the location then will be important, because we are talking about now the higher income earners who start off pay is already like 5-6K. You see, so would they then consider they will be able to find some really more premium ones? And does it mean that the premium location in future might fetch a better price?
We are talking about still BTO, right?
Still BTO. That means now I buy a BTO. It's like, for example, I choose between a prime location versus a more outskirt, let's say in Tengah, or Woodlands. Yes, the appreciation in future, would it be different?
Definitely it'll be different. Of course, a prime location flat will appreciate better as long as it's have better amenities. But at the same time, we have to be mindful about the new regulations that HDB have in place. You remember the 10
years?
Yes. And if you sell the BTO flat, there might be a resale levy if you're taking up another subsidized flat from the HDB. But let's say if you're upgrading to a condo, then that might not be too much of a concern.
I see. Yeah. So if they want to know more about all this consultation, which is the best way for the young couples to know?
I think the best thing to do is to speak to a realtor, someone that they can trust, where they are comfortable in telling them their financial situation, their needs for their family's growth. So best thing would be to talk to a realtor.
Yes, that's what I thought too. Always get an expert's opinion, or you can get a feel so that you can make the right decision, because a house, no matter what, is a big investment.
Probably the biggest purchase.
Yeah, correct. It's the biggest purchase.